Hey everyone, Dave here from Bluebirds Games with another edition of $20 budget decks. Today's deck, Merfolk. It's a tribal Merfolk deck. Some people like to refer to it as fish. You can do it either way, but either way, it's still Merfolk. So let's go ahead and take a look at what we got. Now, it's blue-green. It's a basic aggro deck, but there's a little bit of trickery because it is blue and green. So let's go ahead and take a look here. I start off with a full playset of Mistcloak Heralds. They are unblockable, or at least that's what they used to use the term. Now they just put it as it can't be blocked. It's a 1 to cast 1/1. You'll see why that's going to be important in just a minute. But we start off as your 1-drop with a Mistcloak Herald. The next card is Water Trap Weaver. It taps a creature and opponent controls, and it can untap during its next untap step. This is where our trickery begins. This is a lockdown style of deck, so we put a playset of those in as well so that we can keep your opponent's creatures on lock. Alright. The next card is Tempest Color. It's a 4 to cast 2/3, and when it enters the battlefield, you tap all creatures target opponent controls. All of them. In other words, this kind of card is more for a finisher. There is a card called Sleep that does essentially the same thing for the same mana cost, but this one comes attached to a body. So you basically play this when you're ready to just win for the most part, so that way you can just go ahead and attack in without worry. So I got 2 of those in there. The green part for the creatures. The first one is a 2 to cast 2/2. It's Deep Root Warrior. Whenever it becomes blocked, it gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Essentially, it can be a 2 to cast 3/3 depending on when you've played it. So that's for a little bit of trickery. I went ahead and put a playset of those in just because it's basically a bear. It's a 2 to cast 2/2 with the ability. Alright, the next one is Vine Shaper Mystic. It's a 3 to cast 1/3, but when it enters the battlefield, put a +1/+1 counter on each of up to 2 Merfolk you control. As you can see, we've got a lot of Merfolk and a lot of targets for this. There are others, and they will not be specifically just from here, from regular creatures. So I put a couple of those in there just to beef up. So basically what I'm trying to do is beef up the unblockables so that they can get through. Actually, they just get through so that they're, you get more damage through. Jungleborn Pioneer is another 3 cast. It's 2/2. When it enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 blue Merfolk creature token with hexproof. As you can see, hexproof is it just can't be the target of spells or abilities your opponents control. It ends up being like a Voltron style deck where your creatures just can't be seen by your opponent. You just attack in and win. They can't do anything about them unless they have mass removal. So put 2 of those in there. Swift Warden. It's another 3 to cast. It's a 3 to cast 3/3. This is a little bit of trickery here too, a little bit of tech for you. It has flash, and what it does is when it enters the battlefield, it gives a Merfolk you control hexproof. So in case you have an opponent who has a lot of spot removal, you can go ahead and put this down as a instant for the most part, and what that does is it just makes their spell fizzle or counters it. So there's 2 of those in here. The next card is another 3 to cast 2/2. It is Tishana's Wayfinder. When it enters the battlefield, Explores. Explores was an Ixalan mechanic. What it says is that you reveal the top card of your library. Put that card into your hand if it's a land. Otherwise, if it's not, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. And then you may put that card either back on top of your library or into your graveyard. It's kind of like scrying, only you get to, put it in the graveyard instead of put it on the bottom of your library. So essentially this can come in as a 3 to cast 3/3, but the +1/+1 counter is important. I got 2 of those in there. Now this one is a 4 to cast 3/2. It's the Forerunner of the Heralds. He's in there to help find your cards. When he enters the battlefield, you can search your library for any Merfolk, reveal it, and then shuffle your library and put that card on top of it. And this is where it gets more fun. When another Merfolk enters the battlefield under control, you put a +1/+1 counter on him. So he can grow every time you cast a Merfolk, and trust me, there's a lot coming in. The good thing about this is it says when a Merfolk enters the battlefield under your control, not when you cast a Merfolk. That's important because there are other ways we're going to be putting Merfolk into play with this deck. So I wanted to, have that in there for a little bit of extra oomph. So there's 2 of those in there. This is your Lord. It's your Anthem, your Lord, however you want to put it. It's a 2 to cast 2/2, and it gives all of your Merfolk a boost of +1/+1. Now there are 2 of those in there, so that makes your Merfolk a little bit bigger. This is where a little bit more tech comes in. This is 3 to cast 1/3, or I'm sorry, 3/3. Shapers of Nature. What it does is you can, now remember there's a call in there, so you can do this as much as you want. So if it's mid to late game and you have plenty of mana left over, you can do this as much as you want. You can, for 4, so 1 green and 3 of any, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature. Now that's any creature. So the reason why that's important, there are instances where you would want to put the counter on your opponent's creatures. I'll give you an example, would be illusions. They say when they're targeted, they have to be sacrificed, so you can actually use it as a kill for one of those. Not many instances, but that's one of them. And then the second ability is for 1 blue and 2 of any, remove a +1/+1 counter from a creature you control and draw a card. That's important. We're trying to put as many +1/+1 counters on creatures as possible in this deck. So yeah, you really don't want to make your creatures smaller, but sometimes you just need cards. So sometimes that's helpful to draw the cards. So I got 2 of those in there. Now this is where it comes in where I said there's other ways to put Merfolk into play. I put the enchantment Deep Root Waters in for 3. It says whenever you cast a Merfolk spell, you create a 1/1 blue Merfolk creature token with hexproof. So you're not casting those, they're just being created. So in some instances you can get advantage of not having to just cast them, but because you've cast a Merfolk, you get an extra one. So it's kind of a little bit of techness there, a little tech there. So I got 2 of those in there. For a little bit of control, there's not a lot of control in here. It's more of a swarm the board kind of a deck, but we put some a playset of Water Knots inside there so that you can tap down creatures permanently, unless they have obviously a way to either get rid of enchantments or they have a way to untap creatures. It kind of keeps them off the board. So they're on the board, but they're not really useful. So a playset of those. Expel from Morasca. So it's a 2 cast instant that says return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand. That's important. That also includes planeswalkers, other enchantments and such, so it's not just creatures, so it's a way to get around things that you just can't get rid of normally. But the cool part is, if you have Ascend, if you have the City's Blessing, so Ascend says if you control 10 or more permanents, you get the City's Blessing for the rest of the game. So with the amount of stuff that you're creating as far as tokens go, like token creatures, you should have the City's Blessing pretty quickly. If not, then your draw was bad. But if you have the City's Blessing, this card actually puts that on top of its owner's library instead of back to their hand. Now what that kind of does is it kind of time walks you. And time walk means it basically gives you an extra turn because you're making your opponent repeat a draw, so he's not getting any more new resources. So I put a couple of those in as well. For the rares, first one, Kumina's Awakening. It's 4 to cast enchantment that also has Ascend. So if you have the City's Blessing, or if you have 10 permanents on the board, that includes lands, by the way, guys. So lands count as a permanent as well. So if you have 4 or 5 lands out, you're already halfway there. And if you have nothing else on the board, you're at least halfway there. So you have the City's Blessing. It says at the beginning of your upkeep, each player draws a card. But if you have the City's Blessing, only you draw a card. This is to help you dig and dig and dig for more resources. So the hope is that you have the City's Blessing when this comes out. Now, we're going to go with we went with Seafloor Oracle. It's a 4 to cast 2/3, but it says whenever a Merfolk you control deals combat damage to a player, draw a card. Again, more cards equals more gooder. We're trying to get as many cards in your hand so we can put them out into play as possible. So I went with one of them. I played with this one. So Deep Root Elite is a 2 to cast 1/1. I actually played with him on the Arena app or on the computer, and he actually is really good. He says whenever another Merfolk enters the battlefield under control, put a +1/+1 counter on target Merfolk control. He spreads around a lot. Now again, when a Merfolk enters, not is cast, so when you have Deep Root Waters out, if you cast, say, a Mistcloaked Herald for 1, you get 2 creatures and 2 +1/+1 counters. So he's a little techie. He helps keep the +1/+1 counters flowing to keep your creatures growing. So I thought that was a pretty interesting one. Now, for the special card, I actually did not go with a foil rare. I went with a mythic. The mythic I went with was Overflowing Insight for 2 reasons. One, there is a Merfolk on it. I thought it would go with the theme of the deck. But it also says target player draws 7 cards. Drawing 7 cards, you fill your hand up. It's pretty nice to be able to fill your hand up. So I went with that as the special card for the deck. Alright, now we're a dual color deck, so that means basic islands and forests. The 2 faux fetches, Evolving Wilds, and then a play set of woodland streams as our dual lands. So that is Budget Merfolk. This deck used to be standard legal, but unfortunately the rotation happened, so this is now a modern deck. But that's $20 budget decks.